Hey, colonists, Mr. Long here. We are going to go ahead and continue with a video lecture today on a new concept or term, which is known as fascism. Now, just to kind of rewind for the last week and a half, um, we talked about the term and concept of totalitarianism and what totalitarianism is. And it's actually a form of government in which the government takes complete total control over every aspect of a person's public and private life. People don't have any individual rights whatsoever, and the government makes all decisions and all choices, and people have to follow those rules and laws. And if they don't, of course, there's going to be some sort of consequence. Um, so, rewinding a couple days ago, we talked about the Great Depression. You guys watched a documentary on the Great Depression, the effects that it had on people, and then you guys answered some questions from the textbook yesterday on details of the Great Depression and what the people went through in different countries and what that meant. So this is going to lead us into our new topic or concept for today, which is fascism. And fascism is a form of government also, just like totalitarianism. It's actually a form of totalitarianism. So we're going to talk about some different countries and individuals that would follow fascism. Benito Mussolini would be a fascist, and he would become the dictator of Italy. And then, of course, we have Adolf Hitler, who is the dictator of Nazi Germany. So the question is really, what is fascism? So fascism is a political movement that promotes an extreme form of nationalism and militarism. Now, guys, remember what nationalism is? Nationalism is when you have great pride in your country. You want your country to be the absolute best, the most powerful. And sometimes the only way for that to happen is for your country to go out and get more land. Militarism is when you glorify your military. You have a big military, big army, big navy, a big standing army ready to fight at any time. Now, if you guys can remember way back when we talked about the Treaty of Versailles and what happened to Germany after World War One, Germany was blamed for everything. They had their colonies taken from them. They had land taken from them. They had reduction in their military, and all this was done so they could never ever start another war. But looking and listening to me talk about what fascism is, it is the complete opposite. And if Germany practices fascism, actually they would be breaking the Treaty of Versailles. And that's exactly what Adolf Hitler does when he takes over. Nazi Germany, becomes chancellor in 1933, becoming dictator in 1934. So moving on with really what fascism is, it also includes a denial of individual rights and a dictatorial one-party rule, which I've already mentioned. So people living in a fascist country like Nazi Germany, like Italy, they would be, when I say they, the citizens would be given zero individual rights whatsoever. There's no sense of privacy. You don't have a private life. The government basically knows everything that you are doing. And you better be obeying the government, because if not, of course, there's going to be some sort of consequence. So what you guys are responsible for is you guys have notes in front of you. So hopefully you guys wrote down what fascism is on those three lines. And now we're going to move to this, what looks like a pie chart. You guys are actually going to write some notes in each one of these sections. Now, guys, the notes that are listed on the slides are like single words. They're very, very short. But of course, with all my video lectures, I always add to each slide, and I always add more than what's actually written on the slide. So you guys are actually responsible for writing all the notes in each section, not just what's listed on each slide, because the better notes that you take, the easier your assignment will be for for what we're going to do a little bit later. So let's go ahead and start out with cultural. So please find the cultural section on your notes, and you're going to be filling these notes in there. So there's only three: censorship, indoctrination, and secret police. So hopefully, guys, we all remember what each one of these are. We mentioned them in totalitarianism when we talked about Joseph Stalin and how he ruled the Soviet Union. So let's start off with censorship. Censorship is when you block something. You guys probably don't buy CDs anymore, but back in the day when I was your guys' age, I would used to buy CDs. That was the way you would listen to music. And depending on whatever CD you guys would buy, there would be a parental advisory sticker on the front. If there was explicit language, lyrics, if there's curse words or anything like that, there was always that label. And then, of course, they had the edited version. The edited version would censor or block all of the curse words and the bad language and the explicit lyrics. So that's kind of like the same idea. Censorship just means to block. So these countries are going to block certain things coming in and out of their country. They are going to censor what is being published in newspapers, in books, what is being said about the government. And honestly, guys, think about what the purpose of a newspaper is. It's to give information to the people. And under a fascist country, the government would be in control of what would be printed. So, of course, there would never be any negative things being printed about what's going on in the country. It'd always be the positive stuff. So that would be a good example of censorship. Hopefully, we all remember what indoctrination is. Under a fascist country, indoctrination is very, very important. Indoctrination is another word for brainwashing. And you are going to get your people to believe and think a certain way. And of course, when is the best time to do that? At a very, very young age. So, for example, in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, kids would be separated. The boys would go to one school and the girls would go to another school, and there they would learn all of the Nazi ideas, how to be a good German, how to be a good soldier. And they were indoctrinated. They were taught certain things about certain groups of people, for example, the Jews. And they were taught this at a very young age, so eventually they believed it all. So indoctrination played a very, very big part in Nazi Germany. It molded the citizens and the people's minds into thinking the way the government wanted them to think. And of course, they are going to do this at a very, very young age. Finally, the secret police. This is how fascist countries and their government is going to make sure that the citizens stay obedient. And this is how they control them. And they are going to do this by intimidating them, by spying on citizens. If any citizens are caught saying anything bad about the government, they will be turned in. And consequences, of course, are jail time or worst case scenario, depending, it could also be death or execution. So secret police are going to be used to make sure that the people are following the rules and the laws and are staying obedient to the government. So that is going to wrap up the cultural section. Please make sure, guys, once again, if you need to, stop it, go back, and you need to add information, of course, that you don't see on the screen because there's so much more information I've talked about. So let's move on to social. Now, really, guys, social is pretty short, but social is supported by middle class, industrialists, and the military. So this has to do with the group of people that actually support the fascist government. So in this case, Nazi Germany, you're going to have the middle class. And that class of people are really going to support Nazi Germany. They're really going to support Adolf Hitler and his rule. Industrialists, of course, are people that manufacture goods. Especially at a time of war, guys, you're going to want the government on your side because that means if you're manufacturing goods at a time of war, you're going to manufacture weapons, armor, tanks, airplanes, cars, stuff, anything that would be used in war. So it's good that the government, you get along with the government. And of course, the military. That is how a fascist country rules, through their military. That's how Adolf Hitler had and got all of his power, is by the backing of his military. So once again, a fascist country is supported by the middle class, industrialists, and the military. So we're going to go ahead and go back, and we're going to talk about, I mentioned this already briefly, but examples of um, dictators or fascist governments in the 20s and 30s would be Italy with Benito Mussolini. It would be Francisco Franco of Spain. And of course, it would be Adolf Hitler of Germany. So it's important to know, guys, that it's just not Nazi Germany that's practicing um, fascism, but it's also other countries. And one major reason why these three countries practice fascism as their government is because they were scared of what was going on in the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin. They did not like communism. They were anti-communism. Please make sure that you write this down in the chief examples section for your notes. Okay, fascists were anti-communism. They did not want communism to spread into their country and to take over their government, but rather they accepted and adopted this fascism government instead of communism. Because in their eyes, communism was really, really bad and way worse than fascism, and fascism would benefit a lot of the people that obviously support it. Moving on, going back, here's the basic ideas, and a lot of these ideas we've already mentioned when we talked about totalitarianism, but authoritarianism, basically meaning that the government and the dictator of the government, which would be like a Hitler or Mussolini or Franco, they are in control. And they control every aspect of life in that country. And they are in rule, they have the power, and what they say goes. Any sort of opposition, if you don't like what's going on in your country and you speak up and you say something bad, there's going to be severe consequences to you. Okay? The second point is very important. It says the state is more important than the individual. So all this is saying is that the country, for example, Germany, is more important than the actual citizens of Germany. Okay? So in order to make Germany great and powerful and strong again, like they were pre-World War I, everyone in Germany has to make sacrifices. And all their sacrifices is for Germany. And Germany comes before the people. That's all it's saying. So it's a very, very, I guess we can say, a strong case of nationalism. Them wanting pride, they're taking pride in their country and want their country to be the best. And if that means putting their country before them, then that's what they are going to do. The third point I think I mentioned before with Adolf Hitler, but these dictators of the fascist countries are very charismatic, which means people are drawn to them. You guys are going to listen to a speech that Hitler gives today in a 10-minute video, and I really want you guys to see and witness how this man spoke. Because regardless of your opinions or my opinions and how bad this guy was and all the bad things that he did in history, I really want you to look and realize and see how good of a speaker he was. And people ate up every single word that he said. And that's what charismatic means. People are drawn to you because of how you are and how you talk and how you act. And people loved what he stood for. People loved and listened to every single word that this man gave in every one of his speeches. So that's very, very important. You guys understand that also. And finally, the last point is action oriented. This has to do with if Adolf Hitler wants to go do something, he's going to do it. And he's not going to just talk about it, he's actually going to do it. Now, this should be a good review, guys, but remember with the Treaty of Versailles, Germany is not allowed to do a bunch of different things. They can't have a army more than 100,000 troops. They can't have overseas colonies. They can't take land. They're supposed to pay war reparations. They're supposed to do all this stuff. Well, when he takes over, we've already mentioned, he starts breaking all of the rules of the Treaty of Versailles. He stops paying the economic reparations. He starts to rebuild his army in 1935. He moves into the Rhineland in 1936. All these things, he's breaking the Treaty of Versailles. But once again, he's taking action. He's not going to say he's going to do it. He's actually going to do it. And people love that about him because that allowed Germany to get out of the rut that they were in during the Great Depression, the rut that they were in after World War I. And that's why I really wanted you guys to watch that documentary on the Great Depression and answer those questions on the Great Depression, because it shows you how bad off Germany really was and how bad of shape Germany was. And this man comes along, like I mentioned, very charismatic, telling the Germans all these great things that he's going to do for them. And it's just not all talk. He actually does it. And he builds Germany up again. They become powerful again. And of course, and I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks, is going to eventually lead to World War II. Okay? Something that was, and remember, the whole point of the Treaty of Versailles was to make sure another world war doesn't break out, but we all know what ends up happening. It was a complete opposite. So lots of notes in that section, guys. Make sure that you're writing all the extra notes that I'm talking about rather than just anything that you see on the screen. So let's go back and let's talk about political. I'm going to briefly mention some of this stuff. I mean, a lot of the stuff we've already mentioned so far in this video lecture, but when it comes to the political category, fascist countries are very nationalistic, pride. They want their country to be the best. The only way for their country to be the best is for their country to go out and get more land. And of course, that's exactly what Nazi Germany does. That's what Italy does under Mussolini. More land, more power. The next point is racism. Of course, guys, we've already mentioned this before, and we're going to get into the Holocaust next week, but Hitler is going to target groups of people, specifically the Jews. And all of the problems that are going on in Germany, he is going to blame on that group of people. He's going to use them as a scapegoat. So all the problems going on in Germany, they are going to put all those problems on the Jews. It's all the Jews' fault. And of course, when you have a very charismatic man saying all these things and people listen to every word he says and believe every word he says, people become very racist towards these groups of people, specifically the Jews. Okay, so we'll get into that next week about the Holocaust, but it's important to know. Also, one-party rule. There's no other political parties like, this last presidential campaign. We had Democrats that were against the Republicans. Not in this case. There's no political parties whatsoever. There is no one that runs against Adolf Hitler. It's a one-party rule. Anyone that tries to run against him will be executed, will be thrown in prison. So any sort of opposition whatsoever will be dealt with. And of course, he's looked at as being a supreme leader. The best leader, the dictator. What he says goes. Okay, so once again, guys, these are all characteristics of fascism, which is a form of government. Okay, so let's go back. And finally, we are going to end with economic. And this one's pretty straightforward. Economic functions are controlled by the state, corporations, or the state. So anything that has to do with the economy, the country controls. It's a command economy. The government will control the economy. The people really have no say whatsoever. So in this case, Nazi Germany, the Nazi and Hitler will control how the economy is run. And that is all. All right. All right, guys. Hopefully these notes weren't too painful. Make sure if you need to go back and rewind and get some of my lecture notes that obviously were on the screen because, like I said, it's going to make this next activity a little bit easier for you if you took good notes. Okay. So that's it, and thank you.